Hello and welcome to the second edition of Retired Life TV's online TV show. I hope you enjoyed the first one and I hope you're going to enjoy this one. We're sticking with the format as before this time, but in the middle of the show we've got a little news report. First in today's programme we're back in Becky's kitchen with cook Becky Copestake, who's making a delicious chicken and bean casserole.
We have got 2 lovely chicken breasts and some smoky bacon. We're going to need a chopped onion, so I've done half of it already, but I want to remind you, just to be safe, to cut using a bridge. Make your fingers into a bridge, hold on to the onion, turn it round, and that way there's no risk of you cutting yourself. So that's 1 onion that's been chopped. We need to snip our lovely chicken breasts into bite-sized pieces. So scissors are really the best way to do this. And he skinned them for us, so we don't have to do that. And I gather they come from Diapers Poultry Farms. So we know exactly where they've come from, and they are local. They're quite big, so you're going to have to cut these into slightly sort of more chunks than I would normally perhaps need. Right, so that's that cut. We've got our cold smoked bacon. And again, I've cut a bit of that, but again, the best way is to use your scissors and just simply snip along there so you've got little square pieces of bacon. And really the purpose of this is to get some flavour and some of the fat from the bacon as well. So that's that done. Now we're ready to go and start cooking. We're going to use a frying pan that has a lid. If you don't have a pan like this that has a glass lid, any frying pan, any lid will work. It doesn't matter in the slightest. Tablespoon of oil, and then let's get that on and hot. The first thing that's going to go in is the onion. And with that we're going to also put half a teaspoon of rosemary. And fresh is perfect. Dried has a slightly more intense flavour, and by frying it you bring that flavour out. So we're also going to add the bacon. Get that in, it's starting to sizzle. And all of those pieces will separate as we cook the bacon, so don't worry if they're stuck together, it doesn't matter in the slightest, they'll all separate out. Keep it moving, try and break them up as you go, and keep it down from the edges because obviously the heat is at the bottom of the pan. Give it a few minutes just to let the fat come out of the bacon, let the onion start to soften and the flavour really develop from the rosemary. You'll get a lovely smell. Now this casserole has beans added to it at the end, cannellini beans, and they're the ones that get used to make baked beans. So they're very high in protein, also very high in fibre. A useful thing to have in your diet, and this is a nice way of incorporating them. Right, we're in business. Starting to happen. Separating as we go. And I do wish it was smelly because it smells lovely. Check your bacon for bones as well. Just be careful. Sometimes if you're buying from the butcher, you might find that this streaky bacon has some small white bones running through it. Just feel it with your fingers to make sure there aren't any. Now that's browning quite nicely, so the next thing to add is the chicken. Quite sticky. Right. Now you're aiming to get some colour, so you do want the heat quite high. Give it a minute minute or two to get some colour on one side and then turn it over. If your pan is not non-stick, you'll get lots of brown crusty bits on the bottom. Don't worry about that, because towards the end, when you give it a really good stir, you'll raise all those pieces off the base and that will add to the lovely flavour of the dish. You can see that that's beginning to brown quite nicely now. Be careful with chicken, make sure that you do give it long enough to cook. This has a simmering time of 20 minutes and you do need to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. Any pink remaining means it just simply isn't ready. So that's colouring nicely. Turn that piece over. And then the next thing to go in is a little bottle of beer, or it could be wine. It's about 300 ml. If it's a bit more, don't worry, you'll just have more juice at the end. So, there it goes. Let that sizzle up, burn off the alcohol. And when it dies down, we'll add the rest of the ingredients. So now, oh, it smells lovely. In goes a box of tomatoes. Very, very good for you, tomatoes. And the more processed they are, the better they are. They're very high in lycopene, which is an anti-carcinogenic. So ketchups, good ketchups, soups, anything with tomatoes where they're cooked once or twice even, because obviously these are cooked in this box. We're cooking them again, we're concentrating the lycopene, and it's incredibly good for you. So that's in. And then, because it's tomatoes, half a teaspoon of sugar, just to sweeten them a little bit. They can be very acidic. Half a teaspoon of sugar. And I'm going to season this at the end. So, get a good boil. And then the lid goes on. And we simmer for 20 minutes. So, timer. There we are, and that's our chicken and bean casserole. The beans go in at the very end. Our chicken and bean casserole is cooked, but of course at the moment it doesn't have any beans. So very carefully with the lid off, let the steam fall back in again off your lid if it accumulates. Put that somewhere safely. I've got the cannellini beans, which I've drained. I don't want that juice. In they go. Give it a stir. Just turn it up so that the beans will get heated through. And there we are. That's our chicken and bean casserole. That can be served with crusty bread or with pasta if you want to, and maybe even a green salad as well.
Here's a seriously concerning story for older homeowners who may be relying on the sale of their home to fund downsizing, ongoing long-term care, or for other reasons. The Office of Fair Trading is investigating a number of companies who say they'll buy your home quickly, but after making what you agree is a fair and acceptable price offer, they then attempt to force the price down at the last minute. The BBC investigated two cases recently. In one, a £75,000 offer was reduced to £40,000 the day before the removal men arrived. In the other, the house was sold on a £120,000 offer, but the prospective buyers dropped their price to £80,000 just before the deal was signed. The Office of Fair Trading need to hear about cases like these, and you can contact them at this address. We'll bring you more on this important story when we know more, but in the meantime, make sure you and your solicitor clearly understand any property transactions you may be undertaking or any documents you are asked to sign. Now we're off on day 2 of the coach holiday we started on the Isle of Wight last time round. Day 2 of our 4-night break to Shanklin, and we're off for a day out with Craig again.
Well, and as you can see, the Isle of Wight is very friendly for all coaches. Some beautiful little roads we have to go down. A lot of them I have to close my eyes. You'll see that later. Look at all these seagulls, look.
Coach tours traditionally have at least one stop which is a bit of a marketing opportunity. This one is at Isle of Wight Pearls between Ventnor and Alum Bay. It's not bad, in fact, with some interesting pieces of jewellery to fascinate the females of the species and in some cases to give the credit cards a workout. There's also a coffee shop on site, and you can have a stroll around on the cliff top where the breeze was strong enough to shake the camera around. There's a dramatic coastal road to our next stop, Alum Bay, home of the multicoloured sands. This is the Needles, a cliff feature at the extreme western end of the island, and Alum Bay is just at the foot of the cliffs. The amusement park is mostly closed, but you can still get a coffee or a snack, and yes, you can buy a sand-filled plastic ornament. But you can't collect your own sand anymore for environmental and safety reasons. In the summer there's a cable car, but in the winter, if you're feeling fit, you can go down the alleged 288 steps to Alum Bay, and so I did. It isn't bad going downhill. Down at the beach it was high tide, and the breeze was kicking up a few waves to add to the scene. Well, although it's a freezing February day, it really is cold. We've been having a great time here on the Isle of Wight. This is Alum Bay. I didn't realise quite how many steps I'd have to go down to get to the beach itself, and now I've got to climb all the way back to get to the coach. But we are having a great time. It's very enjoyable, and this is really a good place to come, even now when it's chilly, but at least it's not raining. And as I made my way up the never-ending steps, I decided that having a few sessions in the gym after Christmas really wasn't such a bad idea. Yarmouth, that's Yarmouth Isle of Wight, not Great Yarmouth, our next stop, and this 609-foot long pier is definitely worth a stroll, even in the drizzle. The planks are marked with individual sponsors' name. Each of them gave £25 towards the restoration costs back in the early 90s. The end of the pier is certainly a good spot to watch another of the ferries come in, this time after the 25-minute run from Lymington. Although it's quiet today, the harbour is usually busy in the yachting season and the little town comes alive. And on to our final stop, God's Hill, where the rain really started to come down and we were delighted to relax back into this friendly pub for an hour.